Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome, Scorpio. Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, Scorpio sun, anyone with strong Scorpio. Or if you're just here for the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio general reading, well, this report is for you. So welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. We're going to be looking at the main astrological themes for our upcoming full moon in Scorpio, 26 degrees Scorpio, that is on the 16th of May, 2022, which is in fact a full moon lunar eclipse. So Scorpio, this is your forecast because this is your full moon, but it's a special eclipse edition because we are going to experience, we're still kind of in the jetway here leading up to this full moon to board the, the time capsule or get into the wormhole, so to speak. So this period between the new moon eclipse and the full moon eclipse, right, this eclipse portal, it's like walking down the jetway. So this is where we're at now. And Scorpio, since this is your full moon and it's going to be eclipsed, I am offering this forecast to you this month. So, boy, there is so much to talk about, and it's very challenging for Scorpio and Taurus right now because this eclipse cycle is, of course, based on the position of the moon's nodes, which show us the direction of our soul's journey right now in terms of evolution, where we're being pulled, the north node, where we've come from at a soul level, the south node. These axes are of polarity and astrology are inseparable from each other. So for Scorpio and Taurus, a lot of these themes that are accompanying the eclipses right now because of the nodes are along the axis of who you are, right? These angular houses of the 1st and 7th of your identity. And you are always mirrored back in your relationships. That's what it means to be here in this particular experience in physicality, in third dimensional physicality, is that the polarization that exists within all of us is shown to us outwardly through our relationships. That is the 7th house. And Scorpio, this is where all the action's happening, this lunar cycle and this eclipse cycle, because this is, in fact, where the axis of the nodes. We also have Uranus in Taurus in the 7th house, and we have Mercury that is just stationing retrograde as I'm recording this, which is the 10th, and is going to retrograde back into Taurus in alignment with the Pleiades. So all the action is happening for you, Scorpio, in the realm of your relationships. This is where you're changing. This is where you're awakening. It may be shocking. It may be sudden with Uranus. You may find yourself being drawn to this area without even understanding why, but at a soul level, you just know that it's in relationships. All manner of relationships, Scorpio. The 7th house is marriages or committed relationships with a spouse, business partnerships, any kind of contractual obligation, any type of close relationship that you are invested in, right? Your family members or close friends. This is the social contract or professional contracts you have with your clients, your patients, your employer, your employee, your spiritual contract, right? Anything that represents the form of relationship is the 7th house, and this is where it's all going down, Scorpio. So when you have the full moon, normally in a sign, that sign, especially if it's the 1st house or in the ascendant, what about me, right? Because the sensitivity at that full moon, this culminating point here, is in the realm of identity, subjective experience, I am. So there already is set up for Scorpio at this full moon to ask, well, what about me, right? How am I going to emotionally adjust, and function efficiently as a person, as a personality moving through this lifetime, and how I feel about that? How is my emotional and intuitive landscape going to adjust in the light of possibly a rapid or sudden and certainly impactful adjustment in terms of relationships? And this is where a lot of the identity is experienced with the sun here in the 7th house. This is where it's all at for you, Scorpio. So while it may not be as apparent emotionally, there's distortion. The shadow of the earth is cast on the moon at a lunar eclipse. it may not be as illuminated in terms of your inner sense of emotional self, how to make this adjustment, how to function efficiently by being in rhythm and alignment with what is in the relationship. It's your own emotions. It's going to be not as... it won't be nearly as accessible. It will be distorted. So just like everything, sometimes some seeds take longer to germinate than others, and eclipses are about how the soul overlap of the ecliptic plane, the moon passing over the ecliptic plane of our orbit around the sun, suggests that there is an intersection about us now and our soul's work, and how to integrate those things and to bring them into manifestation just takes longer. So some seeds will germinate and pop out of the soil in 3 days. Other seeds take a while to germinate and to come to harvest. And I think that Scorpio, in terms of who you are, there's a sense that we all remember how we have tapped into the power of relationship or polarization and the depth of meaning, right? That's the South Node in Scorpio. But as a Scorpio person, there's a whole lot of responsibility for pushing that momentum forward with not a lot of the acknowledgement of how it's the Scorpio nature that has gotten us here in the first place, at least not in a positive way. A lot of times it's just very negative. So you don't want to get caught up in that necessarily either, because there's a lot of people where that is more obviously the case than others. So for the purposes of this forecast, my friends, this is really how to make the most of these cycles that just need more time to come to fruition and to allow that process to unfold naturally, even when we want more emotional clarification and illumination. So don't forget who you are, Scorpio. But as a Scorpio stellium person myself, I can say that there is a tendency, and it's now stronger, I would say, to identify the power as coming from within us. And the real truth of that is the Scorpio's power comes through the relationship. It is in the relationship itself that the true power of the Scorpio person is realized, and that's exhibited through Taurus. And there's so much mirroring that this whole time frame for you, Scorpio, is allowing for, because it's once you realize that your real power does come from your relationships, I think the Scorpio person will be more inclined, and probably has been so far, and will just continue to tap into that source of power, which is the investment in the collective bandwidth, and for all of society to reach its highest potential is directly linked to your success as a person, right? And the power that is generated. So Scorpio, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at, like I said, the major themes piece by piece between now and the end of this lunar cycle, and to just remember that there are things that will reverberate down the line in the next 6 months, and to take the moments of clarity and the moments of harmony in the astrology, and even the challenges of the squares and oppositions, to allow the mirror to be as clear as possible, even if you are struggling with what you're seeing in it, or there are changes that are so rapid that it's very difficult to know who you are in the meantime, right? There's who you've been, but who you are becoming is truly a new person. So there are a couple things that I want to point out first before we even get into the lunar eclipse itself. Okay, Scorpio. So leading up to the lunar eclipse, which is on the 16th, the 15th has a number of very important transits that are pretty significant, that are, again, going to carry through over not only the next 2 weeks, but you're going to find the certain areas are going to be relevant throughout the next, this whole eclipse cycle, really. Specifically, Venus and Chiron are conjunct in Aries on the 15th. Jupiter is now in Aries as of the 10th, actually, as I'm recording this. And it will retrograde back into Pisces, but it will come back into Aries and out of its shadow throughout the whole eclipse cycle itself. So Jupiter coming into Aries is really interwoven in a lot of ways, time-wise, with this eclipse cycle. And the 6th house, you know, Scorpio, with Chiron here, and we're all going through these experiences of shame and guilt about who we are, and the inner child needing to be acknowledged, but also having to release and leave the victim mentality behind, stepping into the master teacher as opposed to staying caught up in the savior mentality. These are all these themes with Chiron. It's the biggest hurdle for the Scorpio people here in the area, where it's truly about getting your shit together. The 6th house is where you meet your hidden enemies, you face your challenges, you put in the time day in and day out and dedicate yourself to something substantial in order to perfect your own form. This is the Virgo house, and Scorpio people, this is naturally quincunx. The 1st and 6th house, Scorpio and Aries, they're naturally quincunx to each other, meaning that there has to be an adjustment when it comes to the ego identity and the humility and dedication to a service that has to be the foundation of the 6th house. So the adjustment of the ego in terms of where it is being situated and how that is being used to direct the practice or the training, right? Because in the 5th house, this is where the ego really lives, in the 5th house. And as you can see, Scorpio, there's plenty to talk about here with all of this Pisces energy. But it's in this 6th house that I think Scorpio as a whole is experiencing a lot of inconjunct, right? And specifically about who you've been and how you can work on yourself to step out of who you've been, right? And with the South Node in Scorpio, we know that we at a soul level have already mismanaged powers, and people have mismanaged power. And as a Scorpio person, you may have to come to terms with that in your relationships right now, with all of this Taurus energy. But it's really this Chiron wound in terms of your own responsibility, but your capacity to use the resources at your disposal to perfect your own form. And that it's there's always an opportunity, always. Right? And Aries is about the seed point over and over, right? The charge, the electrical charge, the release of potential, the desire and the potency that is released from the seed is expressed the most for you in this area of really getting down to the purification of yourself, right? Getting into the dedication to some sort of practice, some sort of lineage, some sort of initiation, a protocol of health and well-being, astral hygiene, all of these things. So whatever it is, Scorpio, this has been where you've been held back from rising out of that old identity and kind of feeling almost chained to having to stay in that old mode. So Venus meeting Chiron at this moment is like, no, listen, we all have to actually weave together. We do. We all have to weave together our own robe of light. But it also means that we get to do it. And Venus meeting Chiron feels like, she's not exactly in her best in Aries. Venus is in her detriment because her home territory is Libra, which is opposite. But in this moment, I think she's got exactly the right kind of passion and enthusiasm and courage and a sense of trust in some ways that we can really step out and feel and embody. And for you, Scorpio, embody a new technique, a new meaning, a new practice, a new dedication or training, something, a new passion, right? Some new spark that actually is the beginning of weaving a whole new identity for yourself. This is really important because you're going to get a lot of backup, especially even in the next 2 weeks, because Jupiter and Mars come into your into Aries and they meet in a conjunction. Wow, this is a self-starting management energy, right? Jupiter's the manager. It's got all of the plans, all of the financing, all of the big ideas, and Mars is the action. They meet together in the 6th house. I mean, it's really, you're going to really start being like, okay, I actually can come out of these old identities and start weaving a new form for myself, right? But you have to believe that you can. And there is, you know, Jupiter will retrograde during this larger eclipse cycle, and we'll come back into Pisces and we'll step back into a sense of your voice again and really give that overall picture and expansion of your voice. It's like the volume all of a sudden getting very loud in terms of your voice again, and it's spiritual in nature. So this is Venus and Chiron on the 15th. Now, we see that the sun in Taurus, right, is in a conjunction now with the Pleiades star cluster. They're at the same longitude. If you know your Pleiadian starseed, especially if you have anything in the last like 6 degrees of Scorpio, from 24 degrees Scorpio all the way to 0 degrees Sag, it would be opposite the Pleiades. That would still make you Pleiadian. This square to Saturn is actually the precursor to a T-square with the full moon. So Saturn in your 4th house has been like an elder root system here that has been unyielding in many ways in terms of your personal power. And Scorpio, there's no getting around where this root system is, because it's either the Borg hive mind, that is where you draw your power from, and you have this Saturnian overlord of Saturn, or you are experiencing this as an authority unlike any other that is reaching deeper and more penetrating into the areas of your power and allowing you the real structure and backbone in a lot of ways to transmute and manage yourself emotionally in this area. So it is in a square to the sun on the 15th. It will be in a T-square to this full moon. And as upsetting as this is, right, the sun and Saturn in a square are already like the sun as in the male heir and the dad, especially in Aquarius, right? In Capricorn, it's a little less, it's still dad, but you know, Capricorn's got it's a feminine earth sign. So there's something different, but in Aquarius, it's definitely got a much more electric masculine feel. It's like the electrical force field. It is that which you are not getting through, around, or under. Your only option is to resonate with it. So depending on what collective bandwidth you are resonating with is going to be anchoring you during this process of the eclipse cycle, the longer eclipse cycle, and truly even just the rest of this full moon cycle. But I would say the larger eclipse cycle is definitely worth taking a look at. Where home and family is the 4th house, right? Your inner life, your private life, your marriage, right? If you're married and you have, you know, kids or whatever, your home, and it's where your power comes from. So again, it's going to have a lot to do with where that power comes from for you. And is it the old AI Orion regressive program from Atlantis that went wrong that you're still tapped into, Scorpio? Or and we've all been tapped into this, and still are. You know, Aquarius does cover the realm of social media and the interwebs. So regardless of how we're connecting, it's still part of the experience. So being aware of that is important too, that Saturn is true material. Like, this is a piece of rebar in the ground that you are not getting out, right? It is the anchor and is unyielding, but much like a backbone, it is exactly the type of authority and structure that could be very necessary depending on what bandwidth you are resonating with collectively. This is where your power comes from, Scorpio. And it will challenge. It will challenge the culminating aspect of this full moon and and this lunar eclipse. So to keep that in mind, where are you rooted? What's funny is that every time I got to this point in like the takes that I've done so far, every time I got to this square for you, Scorpio, my throat starts really closing up. So that's something to consider as well. There's some harsh things maybe because, yes, Saturn is unyielding, but it also can be so like the density and the gravity into something like what is anchoring you can be very difficult to get out of. And I think that relationship is just going to be very apparent at this eclipse, and the ego battles, especially in terms of where you feel you belong and where your power is coming from, in conflict to a much brighter sense of cultivation for everything, right? This is really identifying and being identified and sustained by the relationship and the form of the relationship and the health of the relationship and your growth and your spiritual identity with the relationship is going to be for everybody's enjoyment. So, ooh, interesting, right? And this is very Pleiadian, right? The Pleiadian signature truly is about being in harmony with what is, and to going against that is where Scorpio comes into play in terms of attempting to generate more energy through the utilization of knowledge, right? Which is the 7th house, by the way. Utilization of knowledge in order to find balance and harmony, which generates more energy, right? This is using the secrets of the universe, right? This is truly just using magic, right? Natural magic. So, which is a big part of, I want to transition now into this 5th house in Pisces for you, Scorpio, because the 5th house is truly your creative and artistic expression. It's your vital energies finding release, right? It is your sun shining. It is your soul having a voice. It is your sovereign identity being out front. It is thrill and fun and passion and lust and drama and excitement and dating and romance. This is all encompassed in the 5th house. And for Scorpio, wow, it is so divinely and just beautifully inspired. Scorpio people are incredibly creative and tend to be kind of like these channels like creative channels in many ways, that their individual expression of themselves is divinely inspired in a lot of ways. Now, this really also depends on how your boundaries are and your capacity to manage your emotions in this realm and not get carried away into dream and fantasy. There's nothing wrong with that, man. If you have a creative, means to channel this energy, and you have good emotional boundaries, this is really amazing. Now, Neptune has been, really assisting you in this process, right? Has been making this so broad and dreamy and fluid for years now, really tapping you into a divinely inspired expression, artistry, passion and joy. And even Jupiter being here until today, really. And it will retrograde back into this area, actually. Jupiter moving into your 6th house is actually something that is tied into this lunar cycle, and the eclipse cycle, I mean. That's what I mean, because it's going to station retrograde, come back into Pisces, and then come back into Aries, all kind of in the same 6-month window. So there's a lot of managerial help coming into the day in, day out minutia of your own self-perfection, practicing good boundaries and astral hygiene, and really finding your own spark of life in terms of your own inner work, right? And coming out into a new identity as part of the work you're doing. So Jupiter's and Mars will be in conjunction just in this next 2 weeks, the very end of this lunar cycle in this area. So there's backup coming. And so in the meantime, these, Mars meeting Neptune, the fact that Jupiter is coming back into Pisces, but has been in Pisces, right? The voice, the artistry, the vital energies have just been so meaningful and so expansive and so, just lots of resources available. There's been a lot of output here in this way. And of course, Neptune has made an infinite supply of inspiration here as well. And so you may find when Mars and Neptune come into a conjunction on the 18th, which is after the eclipse, that this is the flood, right? Drip, drip, flood, right? There's a torrent as a result of your co-ruler Mars just sloshing through and cleansing everything. And it's going to come through your voice, through your expression, through your passion in some ways. And Mars really does act on, fire-oriented types of experiences. Now, of course, it's going to be more in the feels, but this is where the passion really expresses itself for a Scorpio person. So in the meantime, the Sun in a sextile to Neptune, leading up to this full moon, this is where the energy that is, generated and released with this square, right? The Sun, Saturn square with each other. That energy can be utilized for a harmonious, transmutation between the Sun and Neptune. There's a purification that is coming through your very vibrational essence, right? Your own voice, your sovereign sense of self being showcased, being dramatized, being expressed, is going through a purification process. And Mars is going to, initiate the real big, like I said, swell and torrent of cleansing water to truly purify this voice, right? But in the meantime, the sextile with Neptune, which is very nebulous, right? There's no action, there are no boundaries. It's foggy. It's not clear, but you feel it, right? There's no separation between you and divine inspiration in terms of the way that you are expressing yourself. And this is energy that can be utilized and released into into the adjustment to the relationship itself and your identification with the adjustment. And so these are big, especially with Neptune, these are much larger cycles playing out, and the Sun representing how we identify with ourselves and our own sense of sovereignty and confidence and illumination, right? It's very brilliant here, is just going to be that much more inspired to release that which is it's time to be released and to cultivate for everybody's sake, not just our own. And this is again going to be the result of your own vital energies going through this purification process. Wow, Scorpio. It's not going to be easy, but boy, oh boy, there is some real soul work that is happening for Scorpio people right now. So let's kind of go through the rest of this process and see what else is in store for all of us, but definitely for Scorpio over the next 2 weeks. So like I said, the 16th is when we have the lunar eclipse. And there we go. And we've gone over that considerably. Just know that the Sun is in conjunction also not with just the Pleiades, but also is in the same longitude as and zodiacal degree of Algol, right, the head of Medusa. So this is something we're going to talk at length about in our first Catalyst classroom. That's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday, Well, I don't know when I'm posting this. So if you're interested in getting the replay of that, that may be something available to you if you request it. So if you're on my email list, that's a great way to get access to that Catalyst Classroom. So that's going to be a Zoom talk. We're going to go into the specifics of the starseed markings for this eclipse, the ancient and astrology and mythology around Algol and Medusa, and really start to weave in the archetypal and symbolic patterns that have to do, as well as the starseed patterns that have to do with this eclipse. So just know that, you know, again, Algol, the head of Medusa, right? The releasing of the head of Medusa. Again, this is something about an adjustment, a natural, necessary adjustment that in the realm of relationship, the nature of your relationships, and how you are going to change emotionally and how you feel about yourself is something that's not going to shift very immediately, although it would be more obvious if it wasn't an eclipse. So as we move forward through this time frame, we're going to find lots of connections again with Neptune. There are a number of connections between the Sun and Mercury retrograde and Pluto retrograde. Now, Pluto retrograde is your ruling planet, again, as well as Mars, and is now retrograde in your third house. So also knowing that the excavation of your very mind, your cognitive functions, the communication, expression, truly what's going on in your nervous system and the functioning of it, lots of power to be released from that as a result of Pluto going retrograde. And when the power is released as a result of true understanding, and getting into the underlying, maybe even subconscious. I mean, this is really digging from the subconscious or the conscious mind into the underworking, right? The undercarriage of the conscious mind, Scorpio. But the perspective that it, the anchoring of that from a perspective in terms of what is changing, what is it that you've had to see yourself in the mirror, right, in your relationships, is going to stabilize and be stabilized as Pluto draws even deeper inward into the workings of the Scorpio consciousness in terms of your learning patterns, your communication skills, even just your neural pathways and cognitive functions and your own perception is all, is going through this very, very deep overhaul and has been for years and years, Scorpio. And now it's just reaching ahead as it is getting into these very last degrees of Capricorn. So Sun will have that trine there. Mercury is going to have that same trine there. Let's see here. It'll be after the Sun goes into... After the Sun moves, well before, or well after the Sun moves into Gemini. That's what I'm trying to say here. So as we see that the Sun is in this trine to Pluto, which, by the way, is right on, the heels of the Moon and Pluto retrograde being conjunct at this very same time, the excavation will be something that is very emotionally accessible, something that you are able to deeply, intuitively observe maybe and tap into some things that maybe otherwise had been repressed for a while, maybe not so repressed, maybe just tapping in to a deeper sense or a deeper experience of what is happening in the conscious mind. Wow. But it is the perspective, the mature perspective that is gained when we take into consideration both aspects of something, right? Something and its opposite, which in fact in relationship is you in the mirror, right? It's you and you in the mirror that you are gaining perspective about, that again is going to, I think, be very stabilizing as there is a very deep dive into the realm of your own mind and your own thoughts. I think that, getting into the like I said, getting into the deeper programming that has been going on in terms of the third house, I think is something Scorpio is in a position to really start addressing if they haven't already. And this is something that is going to be even more enlightening about that and give perspective. I would say really it's like becoming aware of the polarization that has been so necessary in order to give perspective about what's going on at the very depths of our own conscious mind and even into our subconscious. And with the moon here, I have a feeling that that's going to be a big part of the experience with what has normally been embedded in your subconscious or running in a background program that you don't even realize is going to have an eruption or a surfacing that is directly related to this identification with, again, the simultaneous mirroring of you in relationship. Now, we are on the heels here again of another ingress. The sun is about to come into Gemini. Mercury has been in Gemini, is already retrograde as of the 19th, and is going to meet the sun at 0 degrees Gemini, right on, your 8th house, Scorpio. And while that is happening, the other thing that is happening is that Mercury, still in Gemini, is going to have a sextile with Jupiter. It's now freshly in Aries, right? So when you have Jupiter in your 6th house like this, Scorpio, you definitely are getting all the resources you need for your own personal dedicated work and service, whatever it is. And it's going to be very important, I think, in this moment, this sextile with Mercury and Jupiter, to have a sense of humor and to be willing to mentally accept and be open to the mirroring within your own self, in terms of how that eventually leads to the generation and distribution of power at a social level. So regardless of the nature of your 7th house relationship, Scorpio, it's the essence of the power that is generated is something that you'll be able to be more open-minded about when Mercury returns back to this point later in June, if you really accept the joke, right? If you see Jupiter as really doing nothing but providing you with something you really need in this realm, which is a mirror, I feel like that this is going to assist you in being more open-minded later when it's time to really start putting your mental faculties into the realm of power dynamics as a whole, right? Because this is the realm, Scorpio, that you are most comfortable in and able to really do your work, right? And that is a big part of Gemini, is being able to process data and information and work with polarity in this area. So without being attached, which is very interesting, right? Because Scorpio knows exactly what's going on down there and is curious, right? Is curious and open to discovery and not necessarily deterred in any way or discouraged from going into that area. So that's going to be something that's way more relevant when we come into June, because we'll be in Gemini season. So not only is this mirror with Jupiter and Mercury in the sextile important to you, Scorpio, I do also feel like that it's in this Sun, Mercury, Cazimi, right? Mercury in its retrograde, Sun always in its forward motion, and from our perspective, they're meeting together at 0 degrees Gemini, and this is like that glass bottom boat, and this is like turning the lens inward, right? Of our own minds, as if our own minds were a lens that were getting turned inward, and the sun is shining through that lens to open up to the infinite space within us, so that when Mercury comes back into Taurus in its retrograde, it is really deeply investigating and deeply reviewing and mentally going over all of the notes, all of the input when it comes to the value and worth of you in relationships, and really learning and growing, especially through your internal and introverted review of relationships. Mercury coming back into your 7th. But there's this sense here that you're going to get this, you know, a very deep view within yourself, as then you are starting to identify with the production of energy, right? And Sun coming into the 8th house is often some sort of really sacrificial will to sacrifice, to invest yourself, to invest your own vital energies into the realm of the social resources, right? Generating social resources. So it's going to be full steam ahead at that point, and we're going to have a new moon in on May 30th in Gemini, and it's going to be in conjunction with Aldebaran. So there's going to be kind of no going back once we get to this point for you, Scorpio, in terms of having to, you know, take the deep dive, do a nosedive in some ways into the realm of power dynamics as a whole, because this is the area that the polarization was really meant to give you some insight about, because now it's time to start addressing these issues directly. So, and of course, with Pluto retrograde still in the 3rd house in Capricorn, again, this is a lot of connections here in terms of the mind, in terms of polarization, in terms of consciousness, and what Scorpio, you know, who Scorpio is and how they identify themselves, and who they can be now, right? And that has a lot to do with it as well. So we already talked about the Cazimi, right? The 20th, the 21st, technically now in Gemini season. And then on the 22nd, we have our next quarter moon. So the 3rd quarter moon is going to be in a, now in Gemini, the sun in Gemini, and the moon is now in Pisces. So there is a sense of really wanting to be open, keeping yourself open, identifying and being sustained in some way by receiving the rewards of whatever is generated by investing yourself into the realm of power, shared resources, cooperation, communion, right? All of these 8th house areas, and you know, it really depends on the nature of your relationships, what type of resources you're trying to generate, but it really does have to do with the form of relationship has an impact on the quality of the relationship energy generated in this 8th house. But anyway, you are still going to be starting to identify and find individual sense of expression here in this area, Scorpio, as we come into the last quarter of this lunar cycle. Now, the 5th house, the moon in the 5th house here in the 2nd degree of Pisces is the square is always a crisis point, so a crisis in consciousness. Now, the full moon was distorted. It was shadowed. It wasn't full illumination, but this square, just like our 1st quarter square, is definitely fully being felt. And do, you know, Scorpio, really, do you put yourself out there in terms of the collective cooperative situation? Do you leave yourself open to receive the blessings or receive that which you have invested into? Or are you holding back emotionally? Are you trying to find a place to kind of hide for a little bit and keep yourself low key and a low profile in terms of your own expression, your own vital energies? Maybe it's not the time. This will give a sense of that conflict so that you can address that consciousness, because how you emotionally are adjusting yourself to any kind of adjustment in relationship land, and it's not exactly apparent with this eclipse, your vital energies and how you feel about them and your own emotional artistic expression, you may not necessarily, it may be worth the moment of pause just to, you know, tap into whether or not you should be on the DL in this situation or not, because the more you put yourself out there, even, you know, in that realm, you do accept what comes back to you, right? And so there's going to be a challenge here of what one, where one is situated in this moment. And this is going to, I could see a lot of this playing out on the larger stage in general, but in terms of individual people, it'll just, you may find yourself wanting to really invest yourself into, balancing the power dynamics, Scorpio, because you still have this south node in your sign here of just like, this is what I tap into, what we have at a soul level accomplished. I know what it means to investigate, to get into the depths, to create and generate and distribute energy, what that means. But your vital energies are just as important, which is a big part of this Neptune and Mars, and even to a certain extent Jupiter is still in your 5th house, or will be, again, in terms of your own vital energies, what you release into the world is going to be a direct relationship and direct correlation to the type of energy that is generated socially. So this is naturally in square to each other too, because there's a sense of responsibility that you don't necessarily get with the 5th house. There's a lot of output, not so much how's this going to affect other people. You're just you, right? And so there may be a feeling of wanting to be on low key or down low, or not exactly put yourself out there. And that's going to feel really weird, because I feel like there'll be a sense of, what else is it for as a Scorpio person, right? Is to invest yourself and sacrifice in some ways, invest your voice into generating something more for not just yourself, but for everyone. It can be just for yourself. That's what greed is. But if you're not a greedy, Orion regressive, then this house is really about how you can give and invest your own voice into, generating more knowledge for everyone, right? More truth, more light. Mercury, as the ruler of Gemini, rides the light beam. It is the speed of light. Very important when we get to the 3rd quarter moon and the 22nd. So full on into Gemini mode. So this is another moment where Mars and Pluto, your 2 co-rulers planetarily, are in a sextile to each other. So again, with this excavation of the neural pathways, your own programming, as it were, the function of your nervous system, again, sextile, right? There's a harmonious connection here that needs to be initiated or acted upon, in terms of this. Just because the light refracts doesn't mean it's any less light. It just shows you the vibration that it's at. And through this experience, I think, of the excavation of the inner mental workings, or what's going on the information level, what's going on in the realm of your immediate environment, Scorpio, the massive overhaul and change is able to, the power is being released, or at least is being revealed in a lot of ways that, again, Mars can take and really, it's like, it's all coming from the same place. Again, this is going to be through some sort of creative channel that you utilize, and which is also going to be strange, since the 3rd quarter moon is in the same area of Pisces, going to have you feeling like, oh, maybe I should hold back, maybe I shouldn't. Well, Mars and Pluto in a sextile in this moment there's kind of like no choice in some ways. It's like the hidden elements of the conscious mind and the underworking program of the conscious mind of the Scorpio being revealed and the power being released. It's like, again, Mars is going to just reveal every vibration for what exactly it is, right? Doesn't mean it's any less from source, but it is refracting into its differentiated and individual unique frequencies. And perhaps there's change coming in just the, and I would imagine there is, in your own creative channel, right? Your own creative artistic expression has been going through massive purification, because that channel, I mean, the age of Pisces is truly ending. And so everything that has to come through that that age has to also be purified and released back to source. But this is coming through you creatively and through your passion and your enthusiasm and joy. So these two rule you. So never fear, right? Again, this is a lot about who, what you know, and how you express that, and how you express yourself based on what you have learned and what is right in front of you. Wow. When we move to we're going to move through this last week, and there's a lot of things happening, but one of them is to pay attention to Venus for just a little bit, because what we're going to find here, Scorpio, is that Venus is going to, she's going to cross Andromeda Galaxy. So we have a Andromedan Galaxy Starseed activation. It's going to be in a sextile to Saturn. This is going to be on the 24th. So if we go forward, and is going to do basically, is going to do something different, is going to sextile Saturn, and then it's going to be in, what is it going to be? In a square to Pluto, right? And so you see that Venus here in your 6th house, right? There's going to be a lot of potential here now that Jupiter and Mars are both in Aries, and Mars is about to come into Aries on the 25th, and there's a lot of potential here. There is a lot of initiation. There's a lot of self-starting. There's a lot of enterprising in terms of like getting a new routine in place, getting a new practice. Remember that Mercury is still in retrograde. So if you are attempting to initiate something brand new that you've been considering during the retrograde, like it's new, it is what it is. But just know that the drive and the expansion and the resources and the meaning and everything behind it is going to be really strong around this time in terms of your everyday practices, trainings, and getting your shit together. And Venus at Andromeda Galaxy, right, embodying a real strong warning here that we don't take on more than you actually can handle in this realm, right? You don't want to burn yourself out with, trying to hold more than you possibly can, right? And this will be experienced, I think, in the sextile. You'll see what you can hold based on how anchored Saturn is and your capacity to manage your own emotional state and how strong your root system is. If your root system is truly strong and based in something divine and divinely inspired and the highest conscious of humanity, then you're going to be able to have a much stronger idea of what you can hold in this area, right? In terms of a training schedule, in terms of a commitment to yourself, right? You don't want to get overwhelmed with all of the potential, because that's what Aries is. It's just potential, 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 desire and potential, right? Andromeda Galaxy starseeds in particular tend to drop the ball a lot in terms of commitments, because time is so different in terms of the physics engine of the Andromeda Galaxy, and how every moment is the only moment, that making commitments that are time-based are really difficult for these people. And so if you are an Andromedan starseed, just know also around this time, in terms of your commitments to yourself, right, that you don't want to overcommit, because then you fall back into an old pattern that may come back around when Mars meets Chiron in June, okay? So that's just something to watch out for later. But in the meantime, this sextile to Saturn and then the square to Pluto, which I think is really interesting, considering that Pluto is your planetary ruler. And where are we at here? That's right. And Venus is just about to come into her home sign of Taurus, which is obviously opposite you, but is in her glory, right? She is at home in Taurus. So, and that means the sensitivity in terms of relationships, embodiment, value, physical value, material worth. You're going to get a lot more sensitive to those aspects of relationship. Not to mention that by this time the moon is already in Taurus because we're winding up this lunar cycle. So Venus was, like I said, in that sextile to Saturn, but now in a square to Pluto, while Mercury in its retrograde back into Taurus is also coming off a trine to Pluto. So Pluto has these double aspects that are lining up with each other. One having to do with the introverted, internal mental review in terms of relationships and the perspective that is anchored here with this Pluto in Capricorn. But Venus is here also in a square to Pluto. So in terms of the status of the relationships themselves and what exactly is, the perspective, the mature perspective that you have as you're going through this internal review process is very stabilizing with this, deep unearthing of the programming here, of the neural pathways, the cognitive behavior. But it's in what's going to really challenge this, or what will be challenging from Pluto, is your embodied sense of meaning in terms of staying in alignment and resonance with cosmic order, right, within yourself. You don't want to, this is why you don't want to overload yourself, because this conflict with Pluto in the third house, right, this is the information. Well, the sixth house is naturally in a square to it, because this is the analysis of information, which is a different activity than collecting information. Now you're crunching the numbers, and Venus is very sensitive to the resonance of all of the, of the individual's process with the cosmic order. It's going to be the excavation of new data, basically hidden information in the immediate environment that is really going to challenge your sense of real bodily resonance that you've worked so hard to create. So this is going to be a test for you, Scorpio, and to see if you can pop out of this into the realm of relationship without losing that resonance in its challenge from Pluto, which is deeply excavating the programming itself, and where that resonance might even be coming from. So that's really powerful too. And we're really wrapping up here, because the 27th, the 28th, 29th, we're getting into the balsamic moon, because we see here that the moon is in Taurus, and it's going to conjunct Uranus. It's going to conjunct the North Node, kind of reminding everybody again about what has been changing in terms of the material world around us. Mars is going to be in a conjunction with Jupiter right before the end of this lunar cycle. So at 3 to 4 degrees Aries, this is where there is incredible action potential and resources. If you are able to really kind of seclude your own process for just a little bit. You're not in a closed circuit, but it's more like you have to be in a closed loop within your own polarization process and the way that you're blending it, and in dynamic relationship to the world around you. But you don't want to necessarily be hyper focused on the experience of this polarization outside of you, if that makes sense. This is a important moment when these two to come together, because this is like lighting the, the spark is getting lit, or there is a breath of fire in some ways that is coming and restoking this fire that Jupiter usually is. And yeah, there's a lot of potential to really generate some energy in terms of what you're doing to purify and reconstitute yourself right now. And Venus has just paved the way through this whole area during this time to really give a sense of where the value, where the meaning is, what's meaningful for you, what you actually want, how you're going to get it. how you're going to utilize your sensitivity to the world around you in order to initiate that. And now you have these two very masculine, fire-oriented signs. One of them, your ruler, now together at the balsamic moon that has just crossed over into Gemini. So Scorpio, really to sum up here, who you are, obviously, is very much changing in a way that you are not coming back from. The mirror of your relationships is the battleground in a lot of ways, and it really has a lot to do with how stable you are in your sense of emotional security and self-esteem, what is your anchor and authority in this realm, and allowing for a smooth but powerful purification through your own creative expression, your own joy, your optimism, your passion, your vital life force, right? The fifth house. And maybe to have, you know, the time for establishing whether or not our boundaries are good in this area is over for now, especially now that Mars and Jupiter have moved into Aries. And so now again, it's just Neptune here. It will station retrograde this year like it does every year. So the access to the transcendental and true divine inspiration in terms of your creative channel is still very, very much present. But now the action is going to be into the difference between being a novice and being a professional human being. And this is a lot of what June is going to be about, especially too because of all of the Gemini energy having to do with the realm of resources being produced. And that is directly related and directly square with your own personal voice. And so either way, there's going to be challenge, but I think you have a lot of action-oriented energy now to really get yourself in gear and to establish a new identity for yourself that is not based on the Chiron wounds of victim or savior, or I'm stuck here, I can never get out of this. The only thing I can do is just, you know, live this life of service to this particular goal, or I can help other people by reestablishing my own wounds over and over and over again, or you can come out of it, right? You can heal these wounds, and you can really utilize a lot of resources and output to find yourself and reconstitute yourself, Scorpio. It's going to be really important, and to let your relationships be the mirror. I mean, it's not easy work, Scorpio, but of everybody in the zodiac, I mean, it's the Scorpio person that wants the truth, right? And they will go to any lengths to get it, and because of the capacity to really feel into the intensity and to be truly driven within themselves. So just realize that your true value and worth comes out in relationships. So not to resist it, and to allow it to do, to hold the space for the work that needs to be done within you, Scorpio. So I'm going to leave it there. That's your forecast for this full moon lunar eclipse, my friends. Thank you for being here. I appreciate every single one of you so very much. There are reading sales available on my website. One is for the eclipse season itself, May to November, called Cultivation, and another one that is lunar transit readings at a sale cost, 30 minutes or 60 minutes, $33 and $66 USD respectively. So you can go to catalystenergies.net if you're interested in booking a reading, if you're interested in the Starseed Fellowship or Starseed Ministry or our Catalyst Classroom. There's also links to that information in the description box below, or how to subscribe through Subscribestar. So thank you so much, my friends. Scorpio, it was my pleasure to offer this very intense and heavy full moon lunar eclipse, but you got this. Don't forget who you are, but don't lose sight of who you're here to become. Okay, Scorpio? Have a great full moon, and thank you for being here. Take care.